Hi, I'm Cole Gertis, and this video is about
Build a tree house in the city.
how to build a tree house in the city. Now, we live in Los Angeles, but I grew up out in the country, and I wanted my son to have some semblance of country life, even if we didn't live on a farm. But when I did some research online, the only things I was finding was how to build a massive structure out on 10 acres of open land, or a pre-built structure for over $2,000, or scaring people away from building a treehouse altogether because of the permitting process. Granted, if you are building a treehouse in the city, there are a couple of things to consider, including the cost and limited space of the land, the privacy of your neighbors, any potential permitting restrictions, and the repercussions of damaging the tree or any of the surrounding ground. When you think of a treehouse, you may think of a big structure really tall up in the sky. However, ours is only 3 feet high off the ground and is more of a tree deck. It's plenty of space to create excitement for the little guy, and it's not bad for cocktails after they go to bed. There's something about being off the ground, even at 3 feet, that makes it incredibly special. Now, I originally built it at this height for safety, but also because all sides of our lawn have neighbors on the other side. And while we have great relationships with our neighbors, it would be a bit intrusive if he or we were constantly peering over the fence line. To get a 3-foot tall deck, I installed 8-foot 4x4 posts. They were 8 foot because you want approximately a third of your posts buried in the ground. Knowing that I wanted a 3-foot deck and about a 2.5-foot railing around the deck, that left me about 2.5 feet to bury underground. Once the holes were dug, I put gravel at the bottom. This allows for drainage and keeps the posts from rotting. After leveling and measuring multiple times to make sure the posts were exactly where I wanted them, I poured Quikrete and let it set overnight. The deck needs to be level amongst all 4 posts, so I used string and a line level to measure the deck line. Once I had that, I built a frame out of 2x10s and attached them using joist brackets. I was nervous about causing any damage when building this treehouse. Property value's expensive and I didn't want to hurt the resale value. Also, you may be currently renting. So this treehouse is built without putting any weight or damaging the tree in any way. Plus, if we wanted to, we could take down this treehouse without any damage except for having to fill in the holes where the posts are and replant the grass seed. I avoided damage to the tree by building the bracing joists 16 inches apart as you would a regular floorboard. But when I got to the tree, I built the joists 2 inches away from the trunk on each side and put braces in between to support the floorboards. You want to leave 2 inches away from the tree trunk to allow for future growth and to allow for it to sway in the wind without it damaging your structure. Now to build the deck. Our treehouse is 8 foot by 6 foot. It's that size because it's roughly the amount of space I had available, but also because 8 foot is a standard board length. If I had made it 9 foot, I would have had to buy a 10 or 12 foot board and cut the ends off. Seeing if your available space is around a standard board length will save you a lot of cutting and wasted lumber. I went back and forth between a 1x6 and a 2x6 for the deck. After consulting a manual that had bearing loads on it for a 1x6 with a 16-inch joist brace, I decided to go with a lower profile. Now, here's a quick tip for installing deck boards. A standard carpenter's pencil is 1/4 inch wide, which is the perfect gap to leave in between deck boards to allow for drainage and any expansion of the wood. It's also really nice to have 2 of them so that you can put 1 at each end when you're drilling in the boards. I used a jigsaw to cut the boards around the posts and the tree, but building the deck was a really quick reward on this project. I planned for 24-inch wide stairs and put a 2x4 in the frame to hold that area. The rest of the frame was going to be railing. I again used my string and line level to mark those lines on all 4 posts. This made it a lot easier to hold up the railing myself and know I was level. The rails were built from 2x2s, and I decided to insert them in between the rails instead of screwing them onto the outside. I knew we would be leaning against the frame, and it just seemed like it would be uncomfortable to have the space between the railing frame and the rails. To accomplish this, I used a kreg jig to drill the holes and then fill them in with the kreg solid hole plugs. Now, all that's left is building the stairs. Surprisingly, this was one of the hardest parts of the job. I wanted to make sure that everything was a good size for him to use now, but wasn't so small that he couldn't grow into it. The stairs were built on a slightly elevated platform. So to build the stairs, I first had to get the height of the deck from that platform. Figuring that I should build 3 steps from that height, that left me with 6 3/4 inches for each step. To save a little bit of space, instead of making the width equal to the height, I made them a little bit shorter. That meant I had to figure out the new angle of my stairs since they wouldn't be at 45 degrees. To get that angle, I used a scrap piece of 2x4 and my speed square to get an angle of 40 degrees. That means I needed to cut the part that was touching the deck at 40 degrees, but the other side that was hitting the platform at 50 degrees. To get those cuts, I used a miter saw, but you could also use a circular saw or a table saw. Once the sides of the stairs were screwed into the deck, I measured up the 6 3/4 inch for each stair and screwed in 2x2 braces on each side and used a 2x10 that was leftover scrap lumber for each stair. Now it's down to building the railing for the steps. For the railing height, I landed on 32 inches, and I'm so glad that they work. It's been the perfect height for the stair railing, and he uses it every time he climbs the stairs. The first thing I did was cut 6 pieces of 2x2. They needed to be 32 inches in total height, but the top needed to have a 40-degree angle on it to match the pitch of my stairs. Then I cut a 1x4 for the top handle of the stairs and cut one end of that at a 40-degree angle. I then leveled and installed the first rail in line with the first step. For each of the other rails, they have to be even with the step, they have to be level, and they have to hit that top railing at the perfect height. So this is where you could really use an extra hand. This took a while to make sure it was perfect, but I'm really glad we took the time, because not only is it really cute to watch him use the stairs every single time, but also it's a great peace of mind to know that it's installed properly and safely. And that's it. That's a treehouse built in a city. All in, the project took me 3 days to build and 2 days to stain it. It ended up costing $500 for all of the materials, and I used a miter saw, a circular saw, a jigsaw, a level and a line level, a drill, and a kreg jig. I hope your little ones enjoy having a little piece of country in your town. If you like this video, please like and subscribe.